Welcome, everybody, to the REI Foundation podcast with Jason and Peely. Thank you so much for checking back in. And again, remember that if you like what you hear, please go to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating and review. And you can also follow us and find us on YouTube at youtube.com/the REI Foundation podcast. Today, we are super excited to have a great guest with us today. Emir Dukic has a really incredible thing going on with Air BNB. He's currently in Charlotte with 25 units, and we're very excited to get him on the show. So, Emir, welcome. Thank you so much. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in real estate?
Hey, Jason, thank you for having me. Yeah, so I think it's a little bit unconventional in a sense where it wasn't my goal by any means. My wife and I purchased a home in Charlotte, our second home in Charlotte, but still a primary residence, about 3.5 years ago. And that home had a detached garage with a room and bathroom above it. Now, I have two little boys, so I couldn't make it a man cave, which is really what I wanted to do with it. My wife would kill me if I did that. So being an entrepreneur, I started thinking, how can I make some passive income off this space above my garage? Now, I thought about getting a traditional long-term tenant in there, but it doesn't have a full kitchen, so that wasn't going to work out. So decided to actually list it on Airbnb. I had my dad come in and build some custom-made furniture out of pallet wood, because we felt it fit in with the style of our neighborhood. And we listed it on Airbnb just to see how well it would do. At this point, Airbnb was still pretty early on, especially here in Charlotte, and the response was shocking, honestly. We were able to rent this single room, 300 square foot space above our garage for basically $100 a night with 60 to 70% occupancy, and had it cover a mortgage most of the months, which was great. So at that point, I was still actually in a startup here in Charlotte. And once that startup was acquired last year, I guess now 2016, in May of 2016, by NBC Sports, I started thinking, okay, what's next for me? And seeing the results and success I've had at this little small space above my garage, I just figured, let's see how far I can take this and how far I can scale out. So that's really my story.
It's incredible. So I guess the quick question is, are you currently just the one over the garage? It has no kitchen. And so how do you basically market it? Just a single room?
Single room. Well, it's a private residence because it's a detached dwelling. They have their own private entrance. So it's a private detached dwelling is how we market it. We provide basic kitchen supplies. We have a microwave, a coffee maker, and there's a large fridge available to the guests downstairs in the garage itself. So they have access to that. There's no sink except for the bathroom sink, but that's not really formal in that sense. And there's no real cooking supplies. But it's really worked out well. It's a very fair comparison to a traditional hotel space, hotel room, just in a more home-like setting.
Now, how did you learn about doing the Airbnb space? Was it did you have a mentor, or did you just take action?
No, I just took action. Honestly, I travel quite a bit with my wife and kids overseas, and the worst place for us to stay is a hotel because once it's time to put the kids down, we have to go down as well because they're still young enough where we can't get them a separate room. So that just was never convenient. So when we travel overseas, we always stay at a short-term rental just to allow our kids to have their own space where we can put them down at night, so my wife and I can enjoy adult time once the kids are in bed. So really that I started using myself initially and was always intrigued by it. So I tried to take advantage of it with our primary residence initially.
Got it. And now as you've grown to 25 units, how have you ramped up your business? What are some things that you've implemented?
So honestly, once we decided to really start scaling this out last year, we started partnering with current property owners that had secondary homes or had investment homes that were looking for traditional long-term tenants. We partnered with them basically saying, we'll come in there, we'll make this actually a short-term rental unit, we'll set it up, we'll furnish the place, we'll do all the communication with guests, and we believe we can get you a higher return than you would get from a traditional long-term tenant in the space.
Wow.
Took a while.
So let me just cut you off right there. Let me get this straight. You are actually partnering with homeowners who have a secondary home. So you're actually not buying the home, but you're coming in there and partnering with them and making the arbitrage between the Airbnb and what they would get for a traditional rental. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. At least that's how we started doing it initially, just to be able to scale out and really test our model outside of just our home.
Wow.
We found some property owners that we worked with. Some of them we basically made a handshake deal where we told them we'll pay you actually a premium on top of what you're looking for, say a 10% premium. If you're looking to rent your space for $1,200, we'll pay you $1,320 as long as you're okay with us making a short-term rental. That was one way. The other way was actually the ones that understood the upside was we charged them a management fee. Basically, we would host it, we would manage the unit, and we would charge them a management fee to do so. Those were initially how we scaled up. But now we're in the actual property acquisition stage as well, where we purchase it or actually are exploring the creation of a real estate fund with the sole purpose of the portfolio to be short-term rental homes.
I love this. I've heard one other person doing this, and you're the first I've actually talked to in person. So what a concept. Why are you jumping now from this over to the acquisition phase of the property?
It's just based on talking to investors and a lot of the feedback that we've heard. We've always wanted to be in that space, but we were still somewhat early on doing it. We were trying to explore our ability to scale the business. Up until last year, my wife and I were still cleaning when we had 6 units. We were still last year. It's beginning of 2018. I got to get used to this. The end of 2016, when we had roughly 5 units, my wife and I were still cleaning all the toilets ourselves, just so we could understand the processes, because it's considerably different than traditional property management, where we also have to manage the turnover of the units themselves. You have to make sure that after every guest leaves, that the unit is cleaned to an impeccable condition, and to ensure that the next guest has a clean space to come to. And there's a lot of processes involved in finding the right team and optimizing that. So we spent a lot of time doing that initially. That's kind of where our focus was. So we could continue adding more properties. As we accomplished that, we are now concentrating on acquiring properties and participating in the long-term upside of owning property as well and managing.
That's great. I'm absolutely intrigued by this first scenario here. So this is a few questions. Walk me through, how do you find these properties with maybe that homeowners have a secondary property, and how does that first conversation go to get them comfortable with you actually taking the property, but not actually being the person staying there?
It especially initially, it took a lot of talking, a lot of, the sales cycle was significant, basically, the best way to put it. We had to really start talking to other entrepreneurs and property investors who were more forward thinking in that sense, who've traveled and experienced a short-term rental before. So initially we got a lot of feedback of no, not interested, go away. Yeah. Like I'm sure most of your listeners do when they try to find properties. But it just takes that one or two to really be intrigued. We start working with them, and then they start telling their friends. And that, it's kind of a snowball effect in a sense. We have also been fortunate in being able to establish a very good reputation within the property owners we work with, but also on the Airbnb itself. We're close to having 1,000 reviews between our properties, easily average 5 stars across them. So that's always an easy thing to show to potential partners, to say that there's a real operation here. It's run professionally. Here's the almost 1,000 reviews that will tell you that this is a first class type setup.
That's absolutely incredible. And so, do you, when you make these leases with people, do you do these month to month with them, or are these year leases? How does it work? Because in some scenario, if you're doing a year lease and you're booking Airbnb out at a certain time, how do you account for that?
So we do right now. Initially, we started with a minimum of 6-month leases. Now we're at a minimum of one-year lease, just because there's an initial cost for us to recoup, which is the furniture cost to set up the property. But we're also very selective in the properties that we work with. We don't just choose any property. They have to be properties in areas that we believe travelers would want to stay in. So whether it's in here in Charlotte, whether that's in downtown or one of the higher end neighborhoods around downtown, or if it's in some of the more millennial friendly neighborhoods that have lots of restaurants and attractions. Really, we built an internal 200-point algorithm to really find the type of property and to identify the type of property we believe will do well as our short-term rental. And we really only proceed with those properties.
What's an impact or something you're facing that's a struggle with your business right now?
It's right now, it's really, as we've grown, it's to be frank, the cleaning and the turnover side of the business. It's a very non-traditional setup from a turnover side. It's not a typical house cleaning that's done that you can hire companies like Mary Maids to do. This is a more deeper level cleaning, and it requires much more attention to detail. And being that our homes are mostly geographically dispersed, even within Charlotte, that makes it a little bit more difficult to be able to run a optimized operation, best way to put it. We're working on it. We have a CTO that's part of our company that's building software solutions to help us schedule our cleaners and to make sure to put measures in place to ensure the quality of service that they need to provide. But that's still something that we're working through right now.
That's great. So CTO, Chief Technology Officer, is that right?
Correct.
Got it. Are you doing your own platform for hosting or just mainly looking through Airbnb for that service?
So Airbnb, the way we're looking at Airbnb, it's a distribution channel for us. It's our primary distribution channel. We're also in VRBO, HomeAway, Flat for Day, some more international booking channels as well. Our CTO is in the final stages of building our own booking site, Raboo.com, to be able to book directly through us. And they'll offer guests certain advantages, mostly lower pricing that comes through us as opposed to going through one of the booking channels. So we're trying to replicate the hotel model in the short-term rental world. What I mean by that is we want to create that consistency that guests can expect from staying at our Raboo property and using short-term rental sites like Airbnb, VRBO as our distribution channel in the same way the Ritz, for example, uses Priceline or Hotels.com or Expedia.com.
That's great. That's incredible. So being so focused in this niche, how do you steer off the shiny lights from jumping into another aspect of real estate, or are you?
We're just based on some of the feedback we've gotten, we're now exploring creating this fund to manage properties solely for short-term rentals. So that's the only other thing that we're exploring, but the opportunity that we see is significant right now in the short-term rental world, especially as we're seeing that application of especially the millennial generation of using short-term rentals as opposed to hotels. We are rather laser focused on creating that experience and that brand and that expectation for our guests.
Awesome. And your wife and yourself are both involved in a business. How do you split up your duties?
So my wife is a nurse by trade. She's still doing the nursing thing. So we also have two little boys, as I mentioned. So she does a lot of our concierge work where she communicates with guests and makes sure that they have the experiences. She does the little, next step, provides the cookies, the snacks, the little process for our guests so that they feel like, welcome in the cities that they are in. And she's also the main designer at this point of all our units. We try to make each one of our homes authentic to even the neighborhood that they're in. So something in a more millennial friendly, artsy neighborhood is going to have more of that vibe to it. Something in a more, family friendly neighborhood will have a more family friendly setup. So we try to really make each home authentic, yet still present a certain level of consistent amenities. So our guests know that they're going to have a worry-free and enjoyable stay at our properties. So she kind of handles that part of the business.
And that's pretty incredible. And it's amazing that they can do so many hats, right? My wife, myself.
Yeah. She's my hero for sure.
So if you're looking today at your business, where do you see, you have this fund, which is a huge undertaking that you're pushing forward to take at. Where do you see your business going over the next 5 years?
So it's really, like I mentioned, we're at 25 properties in Charlotte now. We're adding 6 more in this month. So we're going to be in the 30s. We think Charlotte can be capped out around 60. So we're exploring other markets to move into, initially along the Southeast. We do have 2 other properties outside of Charlotte that we started for exploratory purposes. We have a property in Savannah, Georgia, just because we wanted to see what a more vacation market was like as opposed to Charlotte, which is more of a transient business-based market.
How are you making determination what's a good market versus what's a not good a market?
So this is really Savannah and Baltimore, which is the other market, were really our first steps into exploring that and identifying what factors we need to take into consideration. And that's really why Savannah was one that we chose, is because it's a completely different market from Charlotte. It's more tourist-based. So we wanted to see how our model would work there, especially with so many other more traditional property management companies in place there.
What's something in your Airbnbs that you guys do that makes you stand out? I know you talked about designing the element to it. Is there some treat you leave for your guest or some special thing that your signature recipe is for your?
Yeah, so we definitely have treats for guests. We actually have partnerships with local service providers. So I'm an entrepreneur by heart, so I'm close with the entrepreneurial community here. So all our homes are dog friendly. We allow guests to bring their dogs, which we believe is a key part of the family. We don't charge anything additional for that, and that's been really well received, which is one way that we stand out. But as part of that, we've actually partnered with a local company here to provide our guests on-demand dog walking services. So imagine you're coming to Charlotte with your wife and your kids, and I'm not sure if you have a dog, but let's say you have a dog, Rex, with you. You're allowed to bring Rex with you to Charlotte, which number one is great, and you don't have to pay extra. It saves you money because you don't have to board your pet, you don't have to board Rex. But then you and the family are out exploring the city all day. You could schedule the Waggle company, for example, to come, which is our partner, to come walk your dog for you while you're out and about, and not have to worry about that, cutting off the middle of your activities to come back, walk the dog, and then go back out. We do the same thing with some laundry dry cleaning companies where they will come do your dry cleaning, which is really aimed at our business professionals that stay at our units. We've partnered with co-working spaces to allow our guests to go work from a co-working space for free. Things of that nature is really, we're trying to really provide our guests with a local experience. We work with some breweries where we provide our guests free beers if they go to that brewery, discounts at other restaurants and stores. So it's more of a welcome to Charlotte. Here's what it's like to be a local type experience, as opposed to just here's a place to stay.
That's incredible. And when you create these experiences, do you have people coming back because you've offered that experiences? You get a lot of repeat
exactly. We have lots of repeat customers, repeat guests that only stay at our properties. It's kind of interesting. They'll stay at our property, they'll love it, and then they'll stay somewhere else and like, oh man, I need to go back. So they'll tell us, oh, I came back to Charlotte, wanted to see what it's like somewhere else, tried it. It wasn't nearly the experience that you guys provided us. We won't ever stay anywhere else again. We get that quite often.
Is there if you couldn't be an Airbnb connoisseur or real estate investor, is there something else as an entrepreneur that you'd want to do?
So I'm actually have my last company. I was actually part of a soccer technology startup here in town in Charlotte called Kick that was acquired by NBC Sports. So I was doing that. I was very much a sports lover and was the actually VP of operations of that company when it was acquired by NBC Sports in May of 2016. So I'll probably be doing something else in the entrepreneurial world. I actually have a civil engineering degree, and I graduated in 2008, which was the worst time to graduate, as you guys know, in the housing market and the construction market. I ended up doing that for a few years, but I quickly realized that traditional path was not right for me. So being an entrepreneur would have been it's something that I enjoy doing, and I would have found something else, another passion to explore within the entrepreneurial world.
I love that. It almost makes us unemployable, right? At this point.
Exactly. And that's a good thing in my mind.
What's your end game with real estate?
So really, right now our focus is to scale Rabu as much as possible into different markets. And it's really to go international as well. We believe what we're doing here has opportunity internationally. We've identified markets like Spain as ones that would be really efficient in doing what we're doing and provide the infrastructure and support that we need to do there. So really, we kind of joke around, my wife and I do, that end goal is to set up operations and make it as efficient as possible, and to be able to travel the world with our kids and stay at our properties throughout the world while still managing the business.
Is it in terms of different regulations for different countries? Have you looked into that? Is there anything that would make one country versus the next one that you would stay away from versus one that you would go after?
Certainly, yeah, and that's honestly true even for some cities here in the States. The regulations around the short-term rental world and market are still being established. There's some cities like New York City, San Francisco that have created regulations against doing what we're doing, and we respect that. We don't want to step on anyone's toes there. Our focus is more on markets that are actually inviting companies like our own and inviting short-term rentals to come to them, because it creates another revenue provider for them in the real estate tax that they're able to charge guests and generate through us. So really, those are some of the factors that we look into when deciding where to go, and that includes different countries as well. That's more of the long-term plan when it comes to going international. Our focus right now is initially the Southeast.
If I'm a newbie investor, someone just starting out, or maybe I've just never done Airbnb, what's an actionable step I could take today if I want to start my Airbnb or say short-term rental dynasty or empire?
The first thing I would recommend is actually going and staying at a short-term rental yourself and seeing how it compares to staying in a hotel space. I think it's always good to understand the market that you're going to go into. And then the second thing I would do is I would get my initial property listed myself and see and understand the amount of work involved in managing it. It's quite different from typical property management. I honestly consider it more experience management, because we are communicating with our tenants, our guests on a consistent basis. We have to clean the units on a consistent basis, have to make sure that the maintenance is always exemplary, because we can't afford any negative reviews, because that poorly reflects on us and poorly affects our bottom line. So it's a little bit more high pressure in that sense. And if someone is interested, we are honestly open to talking to investors, to anyone interested in getting into the rental space. Happy to provide any kind of support there, even if it's not a formal partnership. Happy to talk people through it. So I'd encourage anyone to reach out to us.
That's great. Yeah, we'll get your contact details. We'll also put that in the show notes, and that's a huge ask. And so thank you for that. What's your big why for doing all this?
So honestly, I have an interesting background. I was born in Bosnia, ex-Yugoslavia at that point, and was forced to flee the country in the early 90s due to the civil war that broke out. Lived in Germany for 6 years before moving to the States. And when we moved to the States, we came here without knowing anyone, technically, but we were sponsored by our local church that provided us with housing, fully furnished housing, and that had a significant impact on us, because it took a large worry off our plates. Oh, we have a place to stay. It feels like home. It's not this little square room that we feel uncomfortable in. This feels like home. And that's really something that I've appreciated. And what we're doing, we want to give back to the guests that use urban properties. We want them to come into a space that they're not familiar with, but give them that at-home feeling in an environment that is furnished and set up for them to enjoy themselves and to actually enjoy that time in the space and not feel like a sardine in a hotel room, basically, with limited ability to do anything outside of sleep.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Do you have some words you live by?
Really, it's treat others how you want to be treated. Our business is built around that. There's reasons people can't fulfill their commitments and can't show up, can't stay at our units. We understand that, and we give them refunds, which is not something that a lot of other hosts do. If we mess up and something wasn't set up properly, we make sure we take care of our guests. We give them refunds or discounts on future stays. Really, the whole mantra is put yourself in their situation. How would you want to be treated? So it's really treat others how you want to be treated. It's simple, but effective.
That's amazing. And not including your own, of course, but where has been the best Airbnb you've stayed in?
We stayed, my wife and I and my boys traveled to Tuscany, Italy a couple of years ago. And we stayed on a farm in the Tuscany hillside. And that was just amazing to see. It was a little farmhouse there, a little side cottage. It was really cool to see the farm in action that morning that we woke up. They made fresh bread for us that morning and milk from the cows on the farm. It was just amazing. It really felt like you are part of the culture in Tuscany, part of that little world. And that's really what we want to replicate in our properties as well.
Yeah, I think that's what's really made Airbnb so amazing, is that you get that feeling just like you're creating the atmosphere and creating the experience for people. So
yeah,
it's
awesome. Really the goal is to make strangers feel like they're at home in a location that they're not that used to, that they don't know.
That's great. Well, Emir, we really appreciate you coming on the show today. If listeners are looking to reach out to you, talk to you a little bit, or maybe I'm sure we have some people that would love to come to Charlotte. Where can people find you? What can tell us where your Airbnb, your company website?
Yeah, so our company website is rabbu.com, rabbu.com. Best way to reach me, honestly, is email. I'm not the greatest when it comes to answering phone calls, but I keep my email inbox religiously at 0. So best way to reach me is via email, and that's easy. It's Emir, EMIR, @rabbu.com, rabbu.com.
Incredible. Emir, thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate it. This has been an amazing topic. It's a hard thing to do these podcasts because you hear awesome things that you're doing today. It makes me want to run out and try that. And I get in trouble constantly by Peely for all the shiny lights I choose. But thank you for giving me one more thing to add to the list there. Really awesome show. And this is Jason and Peely with the REI Foundation podcast. We really appreciate you checking out the show. And again, if you like what you hear, go to iTunes, give us a 5-star rating and review. And you can also find us on YouTube at the REI Foundation podcast. Thank you so much. Have a great day.